There we go. So if we move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Today's Lunch and Learn will be about getting to know an architect. Today we'll be joined by some of our architect members to discuss about the importance and the intersection of design, community building, sustainability, and affordability. Today our guests include Torney, a partner at Mithun, who has made affordable multifamily housing and transit-oriented urban infill the focus of her work for more than 30 years. We'll also have Paul McElwee, who's a principal at HKIT, who focuses on the design of residential communities with specialized experience in affordable multifamily and senior housing projects. And we also have Marcial Chao, a principal at PYATOK, who has extensive experience in multifamily housing with an emphasis in mixed-use development situated with complex urban infill sites. So here are our speakers today, and I forgot to include myself earlier, but I'm Briseida, the Operations Associate at EBHO, and I'll be facilitating today's Lunch and Learn, and also the moderating the Q&A later today. So if we move on to our next slide, please. Here we have the mission of EBHO, which is to mobilize the power and wisdom of our members to produce, preserve, and protect affordable housing opportunities for low-income communities in the East Bay. Can you click the next slide, please? Here are 3 Ps. So production, to build more affordable housing. Preservation, which includes the preservation of affordability in the East Bay. And lastly, tenant protections to protect them from displacement, which can include just costs for eviction and more. A little bit of our work. We believe that housing is a human right, knowledge is a path to justice, and more voices and more representation leads to better outcomes. And our strength really relies in our membership. So if you'd like to join the EBHO membership, we'll include a link in the chat. In our next slide, we're promoting our Faith and Justice breakfast event. It will be on August 28th from 9 to 12 in Walnut Creek. We can include the details such as the address in the chat, but tickets are now on sale as well as sponsorship opportunities. So I'd recommend taking a look at our website if you're interested in joining us at this event. And then for our next slide, a little bit more about our funding partners. They've been especially critical as EBHO navigates major funding shifts in the housing justice space. So we wanted to take a moment to show our grateful support for their extensive assistance in furthering our mission and values. And then I'll pass it to Kiki Po, Chief Operating Officer, to talk a little bit more about our EBHO membership.
Good morning. Oh, afternoon, everyone. Sorry. So we have a membership of roughly 400 individuals and organizations throughout Alameda and Contra Costa counties. We are a membership organization. This is our 41st year. And so we, like our mission says, we mobilize the power and wisdom of our membership. So sliding scale starts at $5 and goes as much as you want to give. But it's not just about the money. We need all the voices and representation. In our strategic plan, we talk about the more voices we have, the better representation, the deeper our impact. And so we really hope that you bring a friend. If you all are members, hopefully you all are. Bring a friend to the table who needs to be heard, who has an experience or skill set that you think this housing movement needs. Lavender Briscoe, who's on the call, having a little audio issues, is our membership associate and can answer any questions for anyone who has some interest or additional questions regarding membership. There you go, Lavender. And we have a lot of benefits to our membership. The main way we get connected to our members is through our committees, and we have several regional policy committees. So you're looking at not just the two counties, but all 9 counties throughout the Bay Area. Oakland Committee, Berkeley, Faith and Justice, Concord, and then we have some subcommittee work that we do. So check us out if you're not already a member. And again, if you are a member, bring a friend. If you're a member through an organization, consider joining as an individual. And again, sliding scale. So we want everyone here to be a part of the solution of this housing crisis. So I'll pass it back to Rosita. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kiki. And before we get started for today's Lunch and Learn, if we can go on to the next slide, I'm just gonna promote out there our future Lunch and Learn. So in August, we'll be providing an overview of the California Surplus Land Act, including the most recent amendments. And then in September, we'll answer questions from what is digital organizing and how does that look like? How can we spread information on the internet and how to build an audience? So you can RSVP on our website, and please also sign up to our email list for future updates on future Lunch and Learns. So now I'll pass it to Torney, who will be beginning this Lunch and Learn. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. It's just a super big honor to be here, be invited by EBHO and to be here with Paul and Marcial. And I see some other architects on the chat here that I'd love to hear from as part of this series one of these days. So it's just a real honor to be here. So we were charged with a couple of questions, how we got into architecture, does our firm focus on affordable housing? What are our favorite projects in 6 minutes or less? So I'm going to try to tell that story, which I feel like I could take 6 hours to tell. But anyway, so just starting, maybe next slide, just a very brief, little bit of a pathway. In high school, I loved drawing, I love literature, and I landed at Princeton and just happened to sign up for Architecture 101, and it blew my mind that buildings and the built environment was a cultural artifact. I'd never really thought about it that way, and what the profound effect it has on our lives. When I graduated, I was fortunate through just series of happenstance to land at David Baker and Associates in 1988. At a time when, tax credits as a funding source were just taking off, and just feel incredibly fortunate to have David and other folks there as a mentor. And I was there for about 5 years. And then I realized that I had learned a lot about buildings, but I was so curious about cities. And so I got interested in the work of Daniel Solomon, who some of you may be familiar with, who is also working in affordable housing, but also this idea that buildings, like that housing is the fabric of cities and that relationship. So I went back to UC Berkeley, 1992, to study with Dan. We ended up doing a competition together for housing in South Central LA after the Rodney King riots, a new affordable housing typology, which we won, turned into a project. Long story short, never finished my thesis, kept working. And now I'm a partner at Mithun. Dan and I merged our firm with Mithun, a Seattle-based firm that had a focus in sustainability, which we really admired, was opening their San Francisco office. So next slide. And why don't you skip 2 slides ahead to slide 3. So I'm an architect because the biggest challenges of our time are social equity and climate change. And it feels like the most powerful solutions are all about, to those challenges, are all about connection and community. And what never grows old is this challenge of how to put design skills to work in service to social equity and mitigating climate change, and in service to connection and a community of care. And housing, affordable housing and community design are just an incredibly powerful force. So at Mithun, next slide, our ethos is design for positive change. We consider ourselves a mission-driven firm committed to helping our clients and communities address the most challenging issues of our time through purpose-driven and impact-oriented design. Next slide. And so I'm super happy to be part of this community of Mithun. We're about a design firm of about 200 people. I head up our office in San Francisco. We also have offices in Seattle, LA. We're an integrated design firm of landscape architecture, planning, and urban design and interiors. Just one thing I want to celebrate. I joined the board of Mithun when I joined in 2012. Back then, the firm was a majority male-led and owned firm. Just in June, I'm happy to announce that not only are the majority of our leaders women, as has been true for a number of years, that we are now officially majority owned, woohoo, which is a huge milestone for us, and that's something we're celebrating big time. And we were thrilled and honored to receive a national award from the AIA in 2023 in recognition of our work and service to social equity and sustainability. Next slide. So, yeah, and just so grateful to be part of the Bay Area community of affordable housers, which, you know, collaborates across sectors, policy folks, designers, developers, residents, collaborators, transit agencies of all kinds. And every once in a while, I get to collaborate with Marcial and Paul, which is also a real treat. So pleased to be here with you. Next slide. And so, as I said, I lead our San Francisco office, some of whom are shown here in our collection of adorable goofballs. Next slide. So I actually find it easier to talk about projects than to talk about me. So I'm hoping to use a couple of recent favorites, maybe just one, as a way to bring to life what I'm passionate about and what I love about being an architect of affordable housing, which is this idea that affordable housing is this powerful infrastructure for positive change, for social justice, for racial justice, for human health and well-being, the health of our neighborhoods and planet, for education, for sustaining and invigorating cultural legacies. And like so many of our projects, this one, which is in San Francisco's Mission District, was the result of decades of political activism for this site and the park, the area in front of it, to be a new park. This is 130 units of housing for families and transition age youth for Chinatown CDC and Mission Economic Development Agency. Next slide. And Meta and Chinatown CDC, as community-based developers, which I'm so fortunate, so many of my clients see housing as a platform for broader community benefit. So this is kind of a cutaway diagram of that building that shows the ground floor program that included offices for grassroots political organizers, youth arts programs, supportive services for the transition age youth, public bathrooms for the adjacent community rooms, space for a locally owned cafe, and childcare for 40 neighborhood kids. So again, this kind of omnibus of community benefit. Next slide. You know, in affordable housing, as we all know, we have to make every square foot count and every dollar count. So we think about how every design move, every space can provide multiple overlapping benefits. So this paseo, which runs between the building and the park, provides pollinator habitat to support the adjacent food garden, permeable pavers that act as a stormwater sponge, but it's also spill out and social and program space for those community partners at the ground floor. Next slide. We think a lot about how the design of residents' daily route from the lobby to the elevator can take them past the views out into the park through open space. This mural in the lobby depicts the site's location in what was once the rich kind of ecological zone of Mission Creek and its associated wetlands, to sort of help connect the residents to the story of the historic ecology of the site. Next slide. And then out into the courtyard, where over 80% of the ground floor open space is permeable. Again, that kind of triple duty is outdoor event space, meeting space, and play space and stormwater infrastructure. Next slide. The upper story walkway has this kind of biophilic scrim, which later maybe I'll tell a story about in response to one of the other questions. And then next slide. So we Casa Adelante 2060 Folsom was the first new all-electric affordable housing in San Francisco in 2022, and kind of a proof of concept for the building by building electrification on the way to, on our collective way to net zero carbon as we gradually try to green the grid. And we were really pleased that this building was recognized in 2023 by the AIA as one of the top 10 green buildings in the US. And I'm always so proud that affordable housing can show, you know, the rest of the design and real estate community what's possible in terms of caring for our communities and the planet. But next slide, it's really the impact on residents that is the most powerful part of why I'm an architect of affordable housing, some of which is quantifiable. We do a lot of post-occupancy surveys. This kind of shows some of the results of the POE for this particular building in the mission, including folks' impact on folks' health, sense of belonging. On the last slide, and this powerful mural on the next slide, on the party wall opposite the park, which faces visitors as you approach the mission from downtown, is by a local artist honoring Yolanda Lopez, who is herself a Mission District activist and artist. This idea of placekeeping, using programming and public art to nourish neighborhoods' cultural legacy on into the future, and hopefully inspiring the next generation of artists and activists. Yeah, so maybe I'll stop there. I have a few other slides of another project, but I want to hand the mic to Paul. So maybe you could just advance through the next 6 slides and to get to Paul's slides. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, thank you, Anne. That's a tough act to follow. I appreciate having this opportunity. I'm such a fan of EBHO and really an admirer of the work that they've been doing for so many years. And yeah, and I really appreciate having this chance to share a little bit about my own personal journey. It's a bit more of a biographical story, but can we go to the next slide? Just an introduction to myself. In addition to being an architect, I'm also a dad, my family on the left, and I'm also a musician. Friends of mine, we play music together periodically, and it's what I do when I'm not being an architect. Next slide. Our firm is HKIT. We're a 60-person firm based right here in downtown Oakland. We're right actually down the hall from EBHO in their office in Old Oakland. We specialize in multifamily housing as well as K through 12 education. And we've been in practice since 1948 as a firm, and I represent the 4th generation of leadership at the firm. Next slide. As mentioned, HKT was formed in 1948. Don Hardison, Rich Komatsu are the H and the K in HKIT, and they started just after World War II at the Richmond shipyard. Both UC Berkeley graduates, and started a legacy which included some of the earliest affordable housing or public housing projects that were built in the Bay Area. Next slide. So this is me. Back in the 70s, my brother and I, my father and my mother. I didn't come from California originally. I grew up in Pennsylvania. My mother was a nursing student. My father worked at the Philadelphia shipyard. And we had a fairly modest upbringing. Next slide. I was interested in music from an early age. I've always loved playing. This is me and my brother playing some music, but never wanted to do it as a career. I was looking for something that would be more of an impact, and quickly became interested in architecture. Next slide. This is throughout the 80s and the 90s. As some of you may know, it was a period where the middle class in America was under decline. So where my father had been working for years and years at the Philadelphia shipyard, he had gotten laid off as shipbuilding went overseas, but was fortunate enough to get a job at the Philadelphia airport. And the wonderful thing about that is it gave my brother and I and the rest of our family the opportunity to travel basically for free anywhere in the US and also abroad. And that really opened our eyes and nurtured that love of architecture. I was a big fan of Frank Lloyd Wright. We got to travel around the country looking at his buildings, and traveling in Europe as well, where it was just such a stark contrast from what I had grown up with in the US, where there's lots of isolation, lots of open space. There's a real density and a communal lifestyle that I was really inspired by at that time. Moving on. I later got more interested in this idea of making intentional communities and figuring out a way to live more in harmony with nature and more of a dense and more of a collaborative environment. I discovered the work of Paulo Soleri and his idea of arcology, which at the time was looking at alternative ways to build cities that were much more compact, much more sustainable. And I actually spent some time living there as well. Next slide. I spent a couple summers living there, learning about construction techniques. I also built architectural models, and I picked peaches down in the orchard. Next slide. During this time and getting into more of the thesis years of my college education, I became interested in co-housing. This is a concept that started in Denmark, and it's a communal and an intentional community that's made up of individuals who have private home ownership, but they have a lot of shared amenities as well. So common spaces, kitchens, shops are shared, and decisions are made collaboratively. And I was really attracted to this idea, this notion that we could live in a denser and more collaborative fashion rather than being isolated, and the advantages that would have for childcare and elder care. So with that in mind, next slide. As I completed my studies, graduation in the 90s, and it was a big deal for us because I was the first in my family to go to college, and made the decision to come out to California. Next slide. I learned about the co-housing company. This was started by Katie McCammett in the picture, and her husband, Chuck Durrett. They had an office in Berkeley, California, where I worked for a short period of time, and worked on a few different co-housing communities, one here in Berkeley. I also, at that time, started discovering the affordable housing world and the work that was going on there, and the huge community of nonprofits and community-based development groups. I worked with Steve Kodama at Kodama Design for a number of years, and then came to HKIT. I think for me, and Anne has mentioned many of these things as well, what's really impressive to me, and what I really admire about affordable housing developers, is the cause is of course important, but really they're committed to doing things right and making sure that there's a process followed, that the community is on board, that the stakeholders are brought in, that the buildings are environmentally as efficient as possible and low cost. And all of these things together really inspired me, and it's a challenge too. I think that to try to do all of these things very well, it's incredibly challenging, but very rewarding. Next slide. And yeah, as Anna mentioned as well, this is really the heart of the work that we do. For the years of sometimes a lot of brain damage to get to the point where you're finally breaking ground, moving in, tenants are moving in, and you're seeing a real impact on the community. That's really incredibly rewarding, especially getting to meet the tenants and their future home. Next slide, please. So just to talk a little bit about the work that we do at HKIT, I think most of the folks here in the East Bay would be familiar with Brooklyn Basin. And if you've gone over Highway 880, you've seen the buildings there that were developed by Mithun Housing. They had secured sites for 2 buildings, so we did 400 units over the course of several years. These 2 pictures, so what we call Funlock meaning gracious neighborhood, and the artwork that's part of the building. We had worked with a group called Civic Design Studio, located here in the East Bay, and they had involved youth in the creation of a lot of the artwork that is seen in the building and on the outside of the building, and it really tells a story and brings the building to life. Yeah, I'll talk one other project that is recently completed that I'm particularly proud of as well is a project that we did down south near Monterey. The former Army base at Fort Ord had been decommissioned in the 90s, and local group called the Veterans Transition Center had reached out to EAH. EAH Housing has been working with them to secure land and create this home for formerly homeless veterans and veterans needing permanent supportive housing. It took a really long time to get built because of some of the bureaucracy involved, but it was really satisfying when we got to the grand opening and the mayor, who was himself a veteran, was talking about the project and how they had done a recent point in time head count of homeless veterans in Marina, and there was about 70 homeless vets, and this building provides 70 apartments for formerly homeless vets. So in effect, it completely eliminated the homeless veteran population in Marina, and very proud of that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Marcial, and thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Anne. I'm very honored to be here, and thank you, EBHO, for inviting me. As I'm going to try to go quickly here. So my name is Marcial Chao. I'm a principal at PYATOK Architects, and we believe that the positive effects of good design can really make a lot of difference in the lives of people and communities. And we've been practicing that for over 4 decades. Next slide. And the next slide will go probably in a series. So when I was a little kid, around 4 or 5 years old, somebody asked you that quintessential question, what do you want to be when you grow up? So I answered, next slide, I want to be a carpenter because I want to build the houses people live in. You know, I was, and the person that asked me that question, then next slide, said, do you know that the carpenter builds what the architects design? The architect is the boss. So I thought about the next slide. I thought about that for a little bit, and then I answered, well, I want to be the architect. I want to be the boss. And that's how the seed of an architect landed in my brain, my 4 or 5-year-old brain, but I didn't know what architecture was. Next slide. But I followed architecture, and architecture led me all over the world. Next slide. But I started here. I started in the Canary Islands off the coast of Morocco, and that's where I was born. Next slide. I grew up in Las Palmas de Gran Canaria. My father had opened up the first Chinese restaurant on the boardwalk of the Playa de las Canteras. Next slide. Eventually, when I was in 1978, when I was 8 years old, we immigrated to the United States and lived in Maryland, Virginia, New Jersey, eventually settled outside of Portland, Oregon, in the suburbs. If folks who have seen, if folks who have seen the movie Dazed and Confused, that's captured the culture of my high school years, and the documentary, wonderful documentary, In Search of General Soul, really talks about the story of my father and my mother. Next slide. But it wasn't until I got to college, an architecture school at University of Washington in Seattle, that I really started to learn what architecture really was about. My very first design studio was to design a mausoleum, called it the Studio of Death. I was at from Introduction to Architecture. Next slide. But that same year, I also designed my first affordable housing project with Professor Daniel Glenn. And Daniel and I have become really close friends, and to this day we collaborate and work together, have worked together on many projects. He's a Native American architect in Seattle. Next slide. In '92, I won the PO Prize of Architecture from University of Washington, which gave me a full-ride scholarship to go study architecture in Italy for a year. I spent 4 months living in Civittà di Montereggio in Tuscany, studying the urban design of Italian hill towns. Next slide. That program was taught by Professora Astra Zarina. It was Professora Zarina that really taught me to love architecture. And it was, and my passion for architecture was formed in Italy, in my time in Italy. Next slide. In '93, I actually went to Mexico City for, this is after I had graduated. There was a recession going on, not much work in the United States for recent graduates of architects, but I followed Professor Daniel Glenn, who started a first-year program in Mexico City with the University of Mexico graduate students, architecture students, to study the 64 city blocks south of the Central Park, Alameda Central. And then it was an intense 3-week housing charrette to see what we can do with an urban regeneration project. Next slide. It was there that I met Michael PYATOK for the first time. He was a visiting professor for that program. So keep that in mind, 1993. Next slide. Fast forward over a decade later, and I had since then I'd worked in Taiwan, I've worked many other places around the world in architecture, always doing some type of housing. And it wasn't until here where I joined PYATOK Architects in 2005. I remembered Mike. I remembered him from Mexico, that he had housing firm in Oakland. And I called him up, and as timing goes, he actually needed somebody at my level. Another architect was leaving, and I came in and I joined him. And in 2014, I became a principal. And then my son and daughter were growing up at the same time that I joined Mike. Next slide. Nico PYATOK, who started the firm in '84, he devoted his career as an architect, as an educator, as an advocate. He was on the board of EBHO, on the initial board of EBHO when EBHO was formed, to advocate for those who did not have voices. And he has committed his entire career for that effort. And Mike retired in 2000 from the office, but his legacy is still in the DNA of our office, and we are a mission-driven firm because of that. And Mike has been my mentor. Next slide. Through my 20 some odd years at PYATOK, I've worked on many master plans and urban designs. Next slide. As you see here, next slide, as well as affordable house. Are you advancing the slide? Yeah, next slide. I've worked on master plan and urban design projects. Next slide. And go to the next slide again. Those are master plan urban design projects. Affordable housing projects, and next slide. And market rate housing projects. Next slide. I'm going to talk real quickly about two projects in particular. The very first project I did when I joined Mike was a mixed-use building called Seven Directions in East Oakland, a mixed-use building. Two nonprofits came together, a BALTC and a Native American Health Clinic, to develop this mixed-use building of 36 units of deeply affordable family housing on top of a community health clinic. Slide. This project started with a series of participatory design workshops working with the Native American community and residents to really help shape the program and the shape of the building. Next slide. One of my favorite parts of this project is that there are actually 7 circles embedded within the project. But one of my favorites is the top center, which is a circular window that we placed in the demising wall between the housing and the clinic outside the community room. And remember when we were putting that window there, I said to Mike, let's move that window down to the eye level of a child. And Mike loved the idea, so we did. We moved that window down. Next slide. The thought would be that if a child living in the affordable housing part of the building would look through that window and see the world of the clinic, hopefully it would spark their curiosity. And if it inspires them to someday become a doctor, I think we've done our job. Next slide. The current project I'm working on is a development of the Lake Merritt Art Station in Oakland in the Chinatown neighborhood. It spans 2 city blocks on top of the BART station. Next slide. This project, however, started back in 2008 when the city started to undertake a Lake Merritt Station area plan. And since our office has been based in Oakland for 40 years, we worked with a lot of other community advocates to help shape the station area plan. Many community meetings spanned 6 years. Eventually, next slide. In 2018, BART issued an RFP for a developer, and along with BALTC and Strata, PYATOK and SCB, we won the commission to design a redevelopment of the station, which is a 4 buildings, 4-phase project. Next slide. And also a public paseo park on top of the tunnel. Phase 1 is under construction now. It's a 7-story building, 97 units of affordable senior housing. With ground floor food-related retail and a landscape public paseo. But this project is more than just buildings. It's actually, the goal of the project is to heal and repair the wound that was caused when BART built the tunnel in the late 1960s and severed the Chinatown community. When they did that, they demolished 3 city blocks. There were 75 residential houses in those blocks, an all-girls school and a Chinese church, and those were all demolished. And to this day, this part of Chinatown has not healed, and they relocated Madison Park. So this project, the larger goal is to restitch Chinatown back together in cultural healing. Next slide. So this is the senior building that's currently under construction. Next slide, which takes a lot of its design cues from contemporary Asian architecture and connected to Oakland. This is the entry to the senior housing lobby with stairs on the right leading up to the public paseo. That's going to be on top of the BART station with landscape and art. And we're working actually with also Civic Design Studio that Paul mentioned with Tommy there on the public art of this building as well. The kids that he works with doing the art, which is going to be a beautiful addition to the building. Next slide. I don't do this by myself. I'm actually very fortunate to work with a group of very talented and passionate and dedicated architects and designers. Our office is around 40 plus people. And that's what really, drives me to go to work every day, is to work with this amazing, talented people. Next slide. I'm also an educator. I've been teaching for the past 2 years for the Cal Poly SF Urban program in San Francisco. It started in 1988. It has a 37-year history, and I'm very fortunate to be teaching and learning and sharing what I know with students about multifamily housing. Next slide. And I'm also an advocate. I work with, I'm actually on the board of a local nonprofit in Berkeley called Vital Arts. I've been on the board for 7 years. I'm the board president, secretary, and we advocate for affordable artist housing and safe artist workspaces, doing some wonderful work. I would ask you all to take a look go to their website and see the wonderful work that they're doing. We're just undertaking a Bay Area census of artists to really understand. That's it. Thank you very much. Next slide. I'm done. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, Paul, and Marcial, for the amazing insight into the very impressive stories that inspired each of you to become architects, and for giving us, in just a short amount of time, like a very delightful overview of your vital work. You each have very holistic and revitalizing visions that are highlighted in your work. So thank you for telling us more about your stories. And now that we know a little bit more about each speaker, we'll be moving on to a Q&A session to dig a little deeper into your architectural backgrounds. We do have some questions in mind already, but I also encourage people, if they have questions about the presentations, to put them in the chat. We'll try our best to get them answered. But our first question, and this one goes to everyone. I know they were touched a little bit during the presentations, but if you'd like to expand more, what were some of your most memorable project moments? This can include successes and frustrations, and we can start with Anne, if you'd like to start us off with.
Yeah, I think probably it's likely that everyone would say that the most memorable project moments are watching folks move into the buildings and meeting folks who live in our affordable housing, and it's just there's nothing like that. So I would say those always feel so important. You know, the other moment that always feels like a success. A couple of times I've been accused by community members who I've been engaged in years of outreach with after the building is built, being accused that they're like, you said this was going to be affordable housing. You built market rate condos or what have you. And to be able to say, no, it's affordable housing. And that idea that design can really kind of erase boundaries between people of different incomes and allow folks to live anywhere in cities, regardless of their background or history, is really amazing. But at the same time, it's also great for folks to feel there are some buildings like the one I showed where neighborhood identity is really upfront and center, right? That neighborhood culture, the uses of the ground floor and the residents, that the building can also speak to that, as well as the benefits of buildings being somewhat anonymous if they want to. But it's the delight of being part of providing a quality space for neighborhood and for families, that's a platform for both the neighborhood and those families to thrive. I think we probably have plenty of like failure stories, but I'm going to let Marcial talk about the good stuff.
Yeah. I think not to be too negative, but yeah, there are definitely frustrations out there. I think for us in the housing community, it's the elephant in the room that we just want to do so much more than we are doing right now. And we open a development, a new community with 70 units, and it gets 4,000 applicants. So yeah, definitely frustration with all the friction that's involved in developing housing. And you know, even on down to PG&E, there's so many impediments, but it is the reward is worth it. I mean, it sometimes it takes 7, 8, 12 years to get through a project, but when it does open up, we did a project a few years ago for the St. Anthony Foundation in the Tenderloin. In addition to housing, they had a meal program where they served meals, and they were doing 2,500 meals every single day. So an incredibly rewarding project. We would go after it was built, we would go and volunteer in the kitchen as a firm, and it's just amazing to see how many lives are touched by this building. So yeah, it makes some of the frustration worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree with Dan and totally about my favorite part is always the opening and seeing residents move in and having them speak and just seeing the building being used for its intended purpose. There is one story I can tell about a project we did in Seattle, a 7-story affordable family housing, 104 units, affordable family. We started the project at the end of 2019, and then COVID hit, but we just kept going through COVID. But the mayor of Seattle was the first public official to link housing with health, and she issued an emergency declaration to waive design review for affordable housing projects. And our project was one of the first projects to take advantage of it. There, and Seattle has a very onerous design review process, like San Francisco. We saved over a year in that process, not having to go through that. So when we started concept design, when residents first moved in, 4 years. That is a success story in my mind, because it got the building designed up and serving its use and housing residents that needed housing in 4 years, and that's unheard of, right? That means everybody did their job. The architects, the design team, the owner did their job, and then the contractors, the city, and that's a model. That's what should be done. And a lot of us know these projects take 7 to 10. I've had multiple years that projects that have taken over 10 years. It shouldn't be like that, especially when we're in a housing crisis. So that's a success story.
Thank you all for sharing your rewarding experiences, and as Paul nicely said, which make the frustration worthwhile. For our next question, and I'll leave this one open-ended for someone to answer, how does your firm incorporate community input?
You want to start? I think all of us.
Why don't you start, Marcial? You start this time around, and then we'll pile on. If we have anything else,
I'll keep it short. I'll keep it short. It is incredibly important to take community input, and I think all of us believe that, and so a lot is just dependent on the project and dependent on the project needs. But we're always pushing for it. We want to do that. We want to design with our ears. So whenever possible, that's something we really enjoy.
Yeah, I think of it as kind of like a tourist. I mean, I recently did a project in Kotati, and I'd never been to Kotati. So we came to the neighborhood meeting, City Hall. We got to meet a bunch of the neighbors, and I said, look, I'm not from Kotati. You guys are. Tell me about your neighborhood. Tell me what does it mean to live here? What's important to you? And I found that the community input, the design always gets better. when we go through a process, it's like, oh, we got a really good design here. But then we go through community meetings and it's like, oh, we're going to change all this stuff. I don't know. But then in the end, oh, it's even better now. So it takes more time. But again, it's like, that's what I love about the philosophy of affordable housing development, really working with the stakeholders and doing it right, taking the time to get buy-in. So yeah, community input.
Yeah, I guess yeah, it's interesting. It's I feel like community engagement really starts with the relationships. You know, we try to start with those relationships and meeting folks and have as much as possible community members help us co-create the process of engagement, not just so we think that the process of engagement is as important as the design of the building itself. And so in engaging folks in how in understanding what they care about and what they want to look at or what and how we can facilitate that conversation. I'm always struck by how every community conversation is different and no community is monolithic. I mean, just Marcial, your reference to vital arts, we're currently working with Unity Council on the design of the affordable housing that's on the site of the ghost ship, the warehouse fire. And that's not just one community. There's the vital arts community. It's a big part of that process. We're so grateful. But also the families of the victims of the fire is another community with overlapping, but not the same interests, not the same attitudes towards this building. And then, of course, there's the incredibly diverse community, working class, you know, largely Latino community of the Fruitvale itself. And that there are just so many different voices in there. A lot of times we are trying to make sure that the conversation isn't just with the community and us, like the development team, but so many of the important conversations happen when community members meet and hear each other talk about their shared vision for the future. So when we think about engagement, we're thinking about not just like sticking dots on a board and making a dot exercise about a limited series of choices that we bring, but you know, this more expansive view of community conversation. Anyway, I'm sure there's a lot to say about that, but yeah, plus one on the idea that it's absolutely indispensable to what we do.
Thank you all so much for the very essential responses and showing us the importance of listening to community needs and building powerful relationships with people. For our next question, and I'll start off with Paul, what are some designs or materials innovations that you're excited about?
Yeah, it's not necessarily design or material, but it's, and I hate to say it, but it's artificial intelligence. It's coming whether we like it or not, and we're already seeing it pop up in note takers and so on and so forth. And I think it's really critical for us as architects to well, I don't know if we can be ahead of it, but at least to be really aware of what's possible using AI. I mean, our job, we deal with tremendous amounts of information. And so the power of AI to be able to go through amounts of information. So we could look at our past projects, we could look at our details and look at 10 different details. And we can do some analysis of our own work and improve. So I think there's a lot of potential there. And we're definitely going to be, I think, all of us are going to be living with more AI in the future.
Yeah, I think, yeah, plus one, that's a great answer, Paul. I'd also say one of the things that we're really leaning into right now is the potential of mass timber as a material, one that lends itself to offsite construction. So one that lends itself to the kind of biophilic benefits of a natural material, the ability to decarbonize with a low embodied carbon material, but also because of the offsite benefits to speed construction, you know, speed the pace of construction and also reduce vehicle trips to sites and therefore reduce the air quality impact. You know, the folks in the Pacific Northwest are leaders in mass timber, but I think, you know, pretty soon here it will be more cost competitive here as the community of factories and suppliers and subcontractors understand the potential and how to work with it. So yeah, really interested in that.
Yeah, in the interest of time, ditto, but I'm interested. It's going to be interesting to see where the regulations are pushing all of us in terms of on-site battery storage for energy, as well as also looking at resiliency of buildings. I think is really important.
Thank you all so much. And for our last prompted question, why did you all decide to join EBHO? And that we can start off with Dan.
Oh, with me, I don't know, community, inspiration, learning, care, all the good things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead, Marcel.
No, go ahead, Paul.
I was as I mentioned earlier, doing affordable housing and doing it right is very difficult. And having the support of EBHO, I was at a prayer breakfast a few years ago, and it came at a time in my career where I was not having a crisis of faith, but just really challenged by the work we're doing, and spending that morning with fellow EBHO members in song and prayer really recharged my batteries. So I'm very grateful for EBHO for keeping it going.
For me was when I first joined Mike in 2005, Fox Courts was in design in our office in Oakland. And I heard the story from folks working on it about how that project came to be. And for folks that don't know, there was an uptown plan that Mayor Jerry Brown wanted 2,000 units of housing in downtown Oakland, and it was all market rate housing. So there was a lot of advocacy, and EBHO led that, and a lot of folks in the community, including folks in my office, and that then Jerry Brown, put the site behind the theater as for affordable housing. But from hearing that story really inspired me to join EBHO, and because and the power of advocacy it showed, and I joined the Oakland committee. I was on the policy committee for a while with Jeff Levin as well, and I continued to tell folks committees go participate. Yes.
Thank you for sharing your stories. And I want to take a moment to applaud you as our speakers today and give a huge heartwarming thanks to you all three for letting us learn from you and hearing your inspiring stories, and also just all the huge monumental accomplishments you all have done. I was left speechless, so thank you so much. And I also want to give another thanks for the people who have joined us today and for those who might watch this recording at a later time. And as we close out, I want to emphasize our future Lunch and Learns in August. As I mentioned, we will talk about the California Surplus Land Act, to also sign up for updates for our future Lunch and Learns. And as a reminder, if you'd like to support our work and add in your own input, to please join or renew your EBHO membership. And again, thank you to our speakers today. We're so thankful that you took time out of your day to come to let us learn from you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, EBHO.
Keep up the good work.
Bye.